Type 7 is the joyful person or the enthusiast, and they are all about joy and variety and excitement and what's the next thing. And life is like a buffet, and all they're visionary, life of the party, but can struggle with staying present and sitting in pain. They're always just moving on to that next experience.
Oh, I gotta go. I've been working, told them please don't hit my phone. I'm in my zone, bruh, just leave me alone. Was on the road, but I swear I'm coming home. Now the drinks on me, I think we need a toast. See, I did it for me. Now my old friends calling, told them nothing's for free. Told me time is money, dog, swear I paid all my fees. I was starving for this game, now my family can eat.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Couple of Nurses podcast with your host Matt and myself Peter. Before I head into the show, just some housekeeping real quick. Don't forget to check out couplenurses.com. We keep all our show notes there if you guys want to check out the cool links and just read on to what else we talk about. Definitely check that out. We also have our vlogs there, and literally every episode is literally on there. Also, we have wearefrontlinewarriors.com. That's out and about. It's a very cool blog regarding mindfulness, wellness, trying to be a more conscious being. And both of those also have shops. So couplenurses.shop is out and available, and so is wearefrontlinewarriors.shop. For all of you that listen to us and view us on YouTube, thank you for that. We're always trying to build our YouTube audience because YouTube is where it's at. And it's also the place where you guys could actually see how we look and how we interact and what we're all about. What's up, Matt?
I'm doing pretty well. In today's episode, I'd like to welcome our guest, Janna Thomason, which is an Enneagram Practitioner. So she offers deep insight into individuals based on their three centers of intelligence: the mind, the gut, and the heart. You don't want to miss this episode. It's jam-packed full of deep insight into the human psyche.
So, Janna, I know you have a wide variety of nursing experience under your belt. Can you tell us a little bit about those experiences? I know you did a lot of ICU, trauma, and now you're in informatics.
Yeah. So got out of school. I've been a nurse 23 years and went right into trauma, burn, ICU right out of college, worked the night shift, and really loved that evening or that nighttime where I could start to absorb and really understand all the lines and the complexities. And then we moved a little bit closer to home, and I did a stint in a surgical ICU, and then had a family and decided it was time to not work nights. And so I took a position in the recovery room, which I loved, and started beginning to be on a committee where we were doing some optimization on the electronic health record, and got to be involved in some of the design work, and which led me to, hey, you guys, you want to come work for us down here in the informatics side? And I was like, yeah, that's really interesting. And it was completely a whole new world. Had no idea what was all involved kind of on that back end part and how the data is stored and how to retrieve it and all of that. And then was asked to go over to nursing professional development, where I would help onboard and do some of the education for anything new that was coming up within the electronic record.
Was Burns ICU, was that your first choice coming out of nursing school, or did you kind of just take that job just because it was available?
No, I knew that I did a capstone in ICU and knew I wanted to do that. And so
how's the Burns unit? How's the Burns unit experience? Because I don't think we've had a Burns unit ICU nurse.
Oh, it was intense. I mean, they are the sickest patients. And in fact, the unit that I was in, it was peds all the way up to adults. So saw some really, really interesting. We were proning people back, 20 years ago, that had burns, that were in ARDS, and they're complex patients. We had people that had been electrocuted and lost a limb, chemical burns, all sorts of stuff. So
with your 20 plus years experience, what can you tell a new grad that's listening right now? What is one piece of advice that you've learned with your experience?
I would say just to keep your eyes open, looking for things that interest you and bring you joy, and never to kind of just rule that out. And so always be willing to learn and be open and willing to step out of your comfort zone when it's really easy to stay in it.
how were your units overall? Did you have like, because I know some nurses have like a very toxic work environment. How were your units? And also, what made you jump from like bedside to like professional development and more of an informatics kind of route?
Yeah, definitely team approach in the burn and trauma ICU, and in the ICU, we had a group of people that I worked with consistently. Had some people float in, and so I had really, really great experiences in the critical care areas. And granted, that has been a while. And I know that it's a lot different right now in the midst of this pandemic, but and then I loved the fast pace of the PACU area where I got to have critical care patients, but I didn't have to keep them for 12 hours. And I didn't have to deal with families for 12 hours. And so, just being involved in some committees gave me that opportunity to look at a different type of nursing with informatics. And so that really piqued me to be able to translate from like technical talk to clinician talk, to be that like translator. And so that's been a really fun experience, and just trying to understand how we can leverage all of this data that we put in stuff that may not even ever be retrieved, and looking at, is that meaningful? What kind of story does that tell us about the patient and the record?
Did your relationship change with the electronic medical record that we have? Because so many nurses, we have a negative stigma against it. We always think it's just
Yeah.
a giant cash register for insurance companies, basically.
Yeah, and I understanding, the reason why, it can, I don't know, it gives it a little bit of grace. But also having a nurse on that side to go, that's not right. That's dumb. Like, that's a waste of time. That's double documenting. That can be really valuable to be able to have that clinical brain when they're the design around it. But yeah, I mean, it is a little bit of a negative, well, a lot of a negative connotation. And so understanding, and leveraging that data to make it the most efficient, safe, for regulatory, for, reimbursement and all of that stuff, how it all works together, has been pretty fascinating. And being able to explain to nurses the why behind it. I think we all really want to understand the why. Why are you making us do this? Why are you adding this onto my task list? And so if you can understand the why, you can get on board a little bit easier.
So we've never spoken to an informatics nurse. Can you run us through like your day-to-day activities as an informatic nurse in case someone's curious on what you do?
Yeah. So it can vary. You can support a certain solution, whether or not, let's say it's emergency department. And so you're helping run reports. You're helping decide if something needs to be added or removed. You're going up, rounding, looking at seeing how things are going, if something's broken, troubleshooting. A huge part of it is troubleshooting, like putting on your investigator and going, okay, well, does it work here? Or where is this coming from? Where's the breakdown? So I would say it's really big into investigation and looking into what was documented, why, where, when, and trying to put the pieces together.
Okay. How did you start transitioning to a more entrepreneurial route, or when did you start kind of thinking, I need a break from bedside or nursing as maybe the beyond all career as you once thought?
Well, I think I realized that our role as a nurse isn't always the most fulfilling, and that I realized I had to find other ways to find joy and to find fulfillment. And so I started doing some self-development work and started looking at my motivations, why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, and maybe I can find joy and happiness and fulfillment in other places besides our role. We spend so much time at our jobs, and learning to fill our cups in different ways, not expecting our job to do all of that. And so that's kind of what led me down this path of I was burnt out. And when I started kind of the self-discovery phase of my life, I started going, oh, well, this is this is why I feel this way. My reactions, my behaviors, you look back on your past and you're like, okay, I had that same fight over and over with my parents, or I had that same argument with my significant other, or I react the same way. And so learning this has allowed me to choose differently. It allows you to make a different choice, to choose differently, which can improve relationships with yourself, with your peers, with your family. And so it led me down to nurses need this. We are really, really burnt out, and understanding why people do the things that they do can be really powerful, as well as it can give us grace and compassion towards each other, to understand if you have a coworker that is over the top aggressive, plows over everybody, and then you have somebody over here that's a withdrawing type, you can understand like that's how they react to conflict or to stress. One might withdraw, one might go forward and assertive towards you. So it gives you, it's given me and the people that I work with an opportunity to allow that grace of understanding other people, seeing things differently.
So here at the Couple Nursery, we like to talk a lot about adversity and how to overcome stress. Can you share some tips or the ways you kind of overcame adversity? I know you've been through a lot because we've got to know you a little bit before the show. And like, what do you recommend for nurses that are really stressed out in the unit, out the unit, like when they're really down and life is really kind of kicking their ass?
Yeah, I mean, I think about, like how to do like this post-traumatic. We're not even in the post right now. And so the only thing that we can do right now in the midst of this massive burnout, if you don't quit or switch jobs, is to, when you come home, to do all of those things that give you rest and recovery, and getting outside, getting out into nature, not sitting in bed all day, doing those things that you bring you creativity, that bring you joy, that bring you healing, to know that when you do have to go back into these areas of burnout, that you do have some energy, some good energy, on your days off. So really it's rest, recovery, finding things that fill your cup, maybe intellectually, maybe it can be something completely non-nursing, figuring out ways spiritually that you can fill your cup physically, and getting those buckets of your life filled up when you're not at work. And it just can help with some of that burnout. But I don't think we're on the post part yet.
So what do you think are because you mentioned you have to fill your own cup. So if we kind of take a step back from burnout, we all know why burnout happens in the work environment when it comes to, stressful situations, no breaks, ratios, and all that. What do you think happens outside of nursing that affects burnout that you've realized with the people that you've worked with?
Many times they are caregivers at work, and then they come home and they're caregivers at home. And so there's never that time. We stay stuck because I always say we're used to the suck. At least we know what to expect for that. That we don't even realize that we can choose differently, that we can maybe find a different path or a different unit, and we're scared to get out of our comfort zone. So understanding and knowing that there's growth on the other side of that can be really empowering to some of the nurses that I've been working with, to know that you can choose differently. You don't have to stay at that job for 30 years or 40 years. You can choose differently.
And how did you realize burnout within yourself? Because you said self-awareness, correct? So that's a long journey, and everybody grows in different aspects. When did you become self-aware of your own burnout, that you told yourself, hey, this is enough, I need to take a step back from what I'm doing because I'm going down the wrong path?
I was just overall cranky and fussy and crusty, is what I like to say. And I had a negative outlook, and that's really not like me. It was affecting my relationships. I didn't want to do anything. I was bitter. And then I would get around coworkers that were bitter, and it's like contagious. And so knowing that the things that used to bring me joy weren't, I realized it was a big wake-up call. And, I think we're just in such survival mode. And so I had to get past the hump of like my husband being super sick and my dad passing away, my daughter, battling depression. I got to a point where I was like, oh, I am like, we survived this, but now I got to do something different. Like, this is not working. This is not working for me.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you mentioned about the survival instincts? So is it like a learned behavior that we're always in fight or flight?
Yeah, I think as caregivers, yeah, we always are doing for other people, and we put ourselves at the back burner. I think, sometimes it's even, ingrained in our DNA. We care for everybody else. Nursing is really bad for martyrdom. I'm going to be the martyr. I'm not going to take a break. I'm going to keep on going, even though my body is telling me all sorts of signals like, hey, you need to take a break. You need to take a break. You just press on through. And so, I think as a profession that we've glorified that martyr, yeah.
It almost seems like we always have a pandemic coming into fruition from nurses themselves, which is going to be the next pandemic of having burnout workers that won't be able to take care of sick patients.
Mm-hmm. That's scary.
And I'm trying to think, so how did you transition from understanding this, becoming self-aware, and then helping people? Where did your route kind of take you to the practitioner that you are today? And if I'm pronouncing that right, it's called Enneagram? Enneagram, okay.
Enneagram, yeah. Yeah, so the Enneagram really helped me understand the ways, the authentic good parts of me, but also the adaptive or unhealthy parts of me. And so recognizing that was really transforming in my life. I think I became a really much better version of myself. All of the things that people liked about me, I was able to recognize and acknowledge and verbalize. But I've always been, a big people person and understanding people. I mean, being at the bedside for so long and just dealing with people, I've always been fascinated, with why some people are some way and other people. And so I started helping some people around me, looking at some of their behaviors, their motivations, and realizing that I could share this knowledge with other people, with other nurses that are feeling really burnt out or completely overwhelmed or, in this stress, and understanding a little bit about themselves and starting to dream a little and starting to vision, what could happen, what could be.
So what is kind of like an Enneagram? So is there like
Yeah.
different parts of it? Is there like, can you explain to me what exactly it is?
Yeah. So the Enneagram is a personality. It's like a psychological and a spiritual personality tool. It dates back hundreds and hundreds of years, but basically there's 9 different types or archetypes that people fit into. And so types 1 through 9, and each of them have a name. And it's all about how you are motivated internally. It goes a little bit deeper than Myers-Briggs and strengths and some of the other personality tests, because it goes really into internally what you're motivated by. And some of those Clifton strengths and all of those kind of go how you perform.
So using an Enneagram, how can that help me? It just tells you what motivates me and I should pursue that motivation, or how does that work?
Really, it's just self-awareness, understanding how you're wired, recognizing it, putting language to the way that you are internally motivated by, and being self-aware of that, and so that you can choose differently. So if you react a certain way or you're triggered a certain way, you can realize, like, number one, that's a trigger. There's also these centers of intelligence. And if you don't know anything about the Enneagram, you can at least anybody can understand that we have these 3 centers of intelligence. We have this, IQ, intelligence that's in our head. We have this heart intelligence, emotional intelligence in our heart, and then we have this gut or this instinctual intelligence. And so we each person lives dominantly in a center of intelligence. And what this tool can show us is that you can step out of that dominant center of intelligence. So for me, I'm a feeler. And so I live in that heart. It's all about my feelings. So I've dismissed my head intelligence. Sometimes I really need to go to the facts. I need to look at things objectively. I think as a nurse, I did a really good job of listening to my intuition. I had a good way of being able to say, like, something's not quite right. I just got a hunch here. And you're probably familiar with that too. Like, you just have a feeling, that intuition, that body sense. And so understanding, which center of intelligence that you kind of live out of your whole life, can kind of help narrow down your Enneagram type.
So it's brain, heart, and gut, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely brain.
I was just gonna
I'm
say,
for
man,
sure
you're 100% brain.
I'm 100% brain. Yeah, yeah, because like
You're in your head a lot.
Yeah, definitely that. And like even when I talk to some nurses and I give them like perspectives and like ideas, sometimes they say it was like, well, that's kind of like an asshole way of saying it. I'm like, I don't mean to come off like that, but that's like the logical explanation. It doesn't, like, I guess I don't
by intellect.
right. I don't always put as much emotional thought into things. And then with the gut, it's pretty interesting because I'm like 50-50, because like there's times where my guts tell me one thing and I'm like, nah, I can't be it. And my gut was right. So it's definitely like a gut. I feel like I have a gut brain disconnect almost sometimes.
Yeah. And sometimes your gut and your heart can know things before your head.
That makes sense.
They can
Yeah.
sense
I'm
things
definitely brain on. I'm not sure what you are.
Yeah.
Maybe Janna knows. I'm not sure.
Well, are you because you're not super emotional.
No, I feel like I think I'm decently balanced.
Yeah.
But who knows?
I think you might be all of them. A little. Is it possible to be all of them?
Well, that's the beauty of it, is when you tap into all three, you're more balanced, you're more in harmony.
So yeah, that's very interesting, because I was listening to a YouTube video and they talk about suffering in the world, and suffering exists because there's a disconnect between your physical body and, we could say, mental or spiritual, whichever aspect we want to use. So if you think about it, dis-ease is just not being in ease with your mind and your body. So the closer you are connected and in harmony, just like you say, the less suffering that you have in the physical world and both the mental or spiritual side.
Yeah.
So what questions do you ask yourself to start figuring this out? Is there a process that you go through? Is it journaling, meditating?
Yeah. How do you figure out like your motivational factors?
Well, you can read about all of the different types. You can, there's assessments that you can take. There's free ones out there that you can take, but you're the only one that can decide what your Enneagram type is. You're the only one that, and so the tests are good to give you a starting point. But really digging into, is that my motivation? So for example, for me as a type 2, it's called the helper, or the supportive advisor. For me, it's all about being loved or loving people. So like a type 1 is about being good and right. So they're that perfectionist. And so it all depends on, what you're motivated by. So I always recommend that people read about it or take one of the tests to kind of start off to your journey. Sometimes it's really easy for people to know their type. Other times it takes a while. I know lots of people that it takes some time, but it is a great self-transformation tool.
Yeah. Personality tests are always kind of like harder to do because we have to like we have to be honest with those, because we can't say yes to something that we would like to be, but we're actually not. Do you have like a quiz yourself or like a guide for people that are trying to maybe figure out their Enneagram?
Yeah, I have a guide on my website that's descriptions, and those are kind of my descriptions. But that's a free offering that I have on my website, and it's just a PDF that you can read over.
And is there like because they're 1 through 9, is there a few that majority of society falls into? Or is it kind of evenly spread out?
It's interesting. The research that I've looked at, that type 4 is the most rare, which is the romantic or the individualist. They're They bring creativity to the world. And then the type 6 is the loyalist or the devil's advocate. And they say that that is probably one of the most common.
Mm-hmm.
The
Interesting.
loyalist.
4 and 6.
The loyalist.
4 and 6.
Do you see something common amongst nurses? Because sometimes when I look at nurses, I feel like we each have our little piece of trauma that we kind of bring with. And you mentioned, I also want to talk about adaptiveness. Like, how do you recognize that mechanism of adaptiveness? So first question is what do you notice in nurses?
I would say most of the time it's some sort of caring, that servant of wanting to serve people or care for people. But I've actually worked with every single type as nurses. I've seen every single type, and you can see that's one of the beautiful things about the tool is that you can understand some of the adaptive behaviors and know that some people are really not in a good space. So if you have somebody that you're working with or a patient that's very forward, in your face, they're assertive, they're what we like to call the boss or the challenger, they don't mind some conflict or to call things out. They're very direct, and understanding that if they're, steamrolling over people, that they're probably in the not a great state. And so realizing that you have these adaptive or layers that you've put on over your life, you can start to identify when it's coming out of your mouth or when you're acting a certain way, that you can go, okay. And many times, I've been doing this for 5 or 6 years. It's coming out of my mouth and I recognize it, but it still sometimes comes out, that being unappreciated or, so I've worked with all sorts of different types. Some of the nurse leaders that I've worked with actually score really high in a lot of different areas because I think they've developed those leadership skills. And so it takes a little bit of work to figure out their type because they've put on, all of these hats over the years.
Yeah.
It's interesting the way you mention it, because it almost seems like you can adapt by your shortcomings, meaning if you feel like you're not good enough, you're going to work harder than anybody else to outperform, which is a good thing. But then, just like you say, you're still never in harmony. And yes, you're a great leader, but you're always missing something. And that's that layer that people don't realize.
Yes.
I'm not surprised that nurses fall under like all 1 through 9 of those because like we've worked on multiple units and I feel like there's so much different personalities there. Like you can see the more empathetic nurses, the nurses that kind of take everything to heart, and then you see those nurses that like are straight business where it's like not too much emotion, they just tell you how it is. So I'm not surprised that we're all colorful and stuff.
I was gonna say, do you use any other assessments to help other than these 3 that you mentioned? For example, do you look at chakras or anything like that?
I don't. I do use though a needs and values assessment, and it's out there. You can just Google needs and values, but it's really powerful because when you think of needs, we think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, water, shelter, but these are more like the need for order. If you have a need for order or a need for peace. And so when your needs aren't met, that's when you start feeling frustrated and poor in life. And so then also identifying and again, putting that language to your values. That is another tool that I use with people because then they can use that as a gauge of, to make better decisions, to decide if this job is right for you or not. And so I love using the needs and values. And what I find is it kind of intertwines. So for example, a type 7, which is the enthusiast, the life of the party, visionary, they're in that headspace. They, many times they have a need for freedom, of not being tied down, of not being closed in, of having flexibility. And so I find that a lot of the times their needs and values correlate with their Enneagram type.
I think there should be needs and values for like each unit because like if you look at a poor unit, you could say it's probably gonna start with like the basics where it's probably a bad work environment and people aren't being supported. So as a nurse, if I'm not being supported and I feel like I'm in a toxic environment, how can I help to to create new ideas or help improve patient outcomes if my needs aren't even being met? So how can I help the unit or help management if like I don't even feel safe at work, you know? So yeah, it's really good. It's called needs and values assessment.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought
Yep.
about
I
implementing
can,
this into like the workspace maybe, or doing some kind of test pilot? Because I know you were into committees. Have you done any of that kind of work?
I have worked with a couple units, identifying their Enneagram numbers and just understanding, going over each type, and then them knowing what their coworkers were has been really, really good. It's helped with conflict. It's helped with communication. It's helped with camaraderie because they understand, oh, well, the reason that he withdraws, or he or she withdraws and doesn't say anything is because he's up in his head thinking, planning, strategizing. And so, another one might mistake that as being disengaged when really, they're just in their mind thinking.
Yeah. So what kind of question would you ask somebody if you're trying to figure out their Enneagram?
I would probably list all of the types and go through and then have them pick 2 or 3 that seemed like it maybe fit them. So, yeah, do you want me to go through really quick and tell you what each one is?
Yeah, that'd be
Let's do
cool.
it.
Yeah.
Would that be okay? Okay, so type 1, and I'll do this quickly, is the
You
good
can take your
person.
time
They
because
bring
I'm not trying to figure out which one I am.
Okay. So I'm just getting, so they bring goodness to the world. It's all about defining what is right and wrong, and they want to make the world a better place. And so perfectionist reformers, they have a really hard inner critic. They're hard on themselves. For type 2, it's the helper or the loving person, and they bring love and are attracted to love. They're generous. They want everything to be in harmony, and it's all about relationships with the type 2. Type 3 is the effective person or the achiever, and it's all about efficiency and competence and goal setting and achieving those goals. And sometimes they can kind of fall asleep to who they are because they're always kind of shape-shifting on who they need to be. The type 4 is the originalist or the individualists, and they are attracted to originality, creativity, authenticity. Many times they're very artistic and imaginative, and they suffer from each type has a passion or a sin, and for the type 4, it's envy. They just have this longing that can't ever be met. Type 5 is the wise person or the investigator or the observer, and it's all about wisdom, knowledge, and learning. They're that head type. They are all about processes and getting as much information as they can. Type 6 is the loyalist, and they're attracted to and value loyalty. They are faithful, trustworthy team players, but can suffer from worst case scenario thinking. So always planning, always thinking about, worst case scenarios, contingency plans, and kind of can have their questioners or that devil's advocate. Type 7 is the joyful person or the enthusiast, and they are all about joy and variety and excitement and what's the next thing, and life is like a buffet, and all their visionary life of the party, but can struggle with staying present and sitting in pain. They're always just moving on to that next experience that can help, give them something to look forward to. Type 8 is the powerful person or the challenger or the boss, and they are attracted to and appreciate power. So they're strong, independent, straightforward, assertive, direct, and it's all about lust. And when I say lust, I don't mean in the sexual sense. I mean like just amping up of power, that energy. And then type 9, the last one, is the peaceful person or the peacemaker, and they are all about bringing peace and harmony, and they are very conflict avoidant. So they'll do anything they can to not have conflict. So they are really good about being mediators and seeing kind of both sides of the story. So that was a quick rundown.
So now I'm thinking about
Of
it.
this.
You said you got nailed down to 3. I guess I feel like I have traits of 4, 5, 6, and 7. I got 4 of
Okay.
them.
Okay.
You think about it, Matt?
Yeah, so it's funny because the last one you mentioned, I used to always mediate, avoid conflict, and I always wanted peace amongst everybody in the group.
When you were younger?
When I was younger,
I'd say the way I felt too. I was super zen when I was younger, but I grew out of that super zen.
now you know how to punch somebody out.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
So I would say 7 a little bit, like an enthusiast there. Some, I don't know if it's travel nursing or everything that we're doing, but it's always on to the next. Like I don't slow down. And that's one thing I struggle with because I have to kind of gauge myself back and enjoy that present moment. Or I'm with somebody, what's next? A little bit of 2, I saw some harmony there that I enjoyed, and I always want like world peace in a way. Like that's like my mission in life. I want to figure out how we could like create peace, but it's so hard in this disconnected world. So that's where my mind's at with those.
And which one did you say?
Okay.
Did you say you were? You were number 2, I think. you were
And
saying?
the 2, type 2.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
4? So
Yeah.
I'm going to definitely dive deep into this for a little bit.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to take a bath and look into it later on.
Okay.
What did you notice like amongst this 30-minute conversation amongst us?
I noticed that, Matt, you, I think, are probably more of a forward. You mentioned like what's next and thinking ahead. There's lots of layers to the Enneagram. There's wings, there's subtypes, there's lots of different layers, but there's also types have a certain orientation to time. And when you mention, thinking ahead and future, there are 3 types that are forward or future oriented. And so their work, the work for them is to stay present to the now and working on, sitting with pain and emotions and being present to that. Yeah.
I could attest I got attest with that one, the one where you're saying that he's like on to the next one, because that's something that we both struggle with. Is we have good ideas and we start doing them, and then once we kind of start doing it for a little bit, we move on to the next thing, and sometimes we leave things undone. So that's definitely something that we need to work on in the future.
Yeah, and Peter, I'd say that you definitely a head type, which is 5, 6, and 7. So I would focus on those 3.
For sure, we'll do it 5, 6, and 7. Yeah, so I guess I did a pretty good assessment of myself too. I threw a little 4 in there, but 5, 6, and 7 seems legit.
Yeah. And you can, the model that I use is you can grab from other numbers. So like if you, as a type 2, it's really good for me to head to the 5 to step into my head intelligence, and then also step into the power and the direction and the action of the 8. So there's this path that you can take to grow in your type as well.
As a 5, I'm here to help.
Okay. Well, yeah, and you probably need to step into your heart at some point, and then the action part of that's that 8.
100%.
And this is interesting because it's a little bit less woo. For example, some people use astrology and all this other terms, and people kind of get disengaged from it because they think it's more of a spiritual, unfactual sense. And here it's a little bit more concrete, where you could kind of dictate everything, and it's more grounded into, I don't know how to put it into words, but it's more personality type oriented, where you could actually solve it, not saying you're some kind of Pisces water and that's it. That's all I can do with it.
Right, this is cool because like with those birth types and stuff, like it's almost like considering like your birthday and your birth time. With Enneagrams, it's more like who am I as a person, and that like it's almost you explaining yourself to yourself, and why you do certain things instead of like just based on where you're born or what time, where it's kind of just like not really the most practical thing if you're trying to figure out who you are. Because if you're trying to figure out who you are as a person, you shouldn't look to the stars. You should look within yourself, right? And this is kind of what the Enneagrams are.
Yeah, and once you start that inner journey of yourself and understanding, why you do the things you do, then it just like ripples to the relationships around you, and it gives you an opportunity to give yourself some grace and be that kind of curious observer, is what I like to call, like internally looking at without judgment. Oh, well, I reacted that way. I always react that way. What can I learn from that?
And I noticed you mentioned grace a few times throughout the episode. So
Mhm.
is grace something you truly, really believe in that could change a lot of people? Is that like the
Oh, yeah.
hallmark of the design?
I don't know if it's yeah, I would say that's the hallmark of the design. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we all need, yeah, we all need grace for ourselves to give us, we are hard on ourselves. We have this inner critic that's in there, telling us, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, whatever. And when we can give ourselves a little bit of grace, and then we give our coworkers and people that we meet and the people that we have, our family, anybody who we have conflict with, we can give grace to them as well.
You mentioned that inner critic. Do you think that's a voice that was from childhood, which is the subconscious mind, the body that's always talking you down, or who is that inner voice? And this is all just
I think
speculation.
I think it can be, for some types, it's like an inner committee. And so I think it's different. I do like to do inner critic work with women, with clients, and really just kind of do that observer where you're looking and going, okay, what are they trying to protect me from? Kind of stepping back and doing that curiosity, because many times they're trying to keep us safe or kind of trying to protect us from something or to somehow protect. And so if you can kind of dive a little bit deeper into that, it can be helpful
So you said you work
for you to take.
you said you work with females and are inner critic. What's something that women criticize themselves most?
Oh, I would say shame of I'm not good enough. I'm not enoughness. I'm I, I can't give myself 100% at work because I'm giving myself 100% at home, and then your loved one gets the scraps. So just that shame of the expectation that you have to be a certain way, you have to have it all together and not allow yourself to rest, recover.
I think it's tough for women, especially now with the time of social media, comparison, just like you said, shame, I'm not good enough, and they need to get lips or whether it's breasts or different augmentations or more makeup. And there's just so much, and not including that, but they have such a hard time becoming best friends. I don't know why they're so catty. And Peter and I are both males, but it's like any single time I've known friends that were like a trio or whatever, for some after months or years, they somehow one of them has to drift off, or someone has to kind of cause some conflict where they can't be the three best friends.
I wonder why that is. Do you have any ideas?
I think it's just these adaptive behaviors that we've put on over the years that, when you're not in a healthy state, when you're not accessing all, those three centers of intelligence, when your feelings get hurt, when there's something objective that you could look at, like what are the facts? And sometimes we don't have the best conflict skills, communication skills, and add a bunch of emotions into that. And a lot of us haven't done the good thought work, understanding that a thought leads to, whatever we're thinking leads to how we feel, and being able to distinguish that and go, okay, what's a different thought that I can have? Going to that intellect part and going that this thought can make me feel differently. If I don't have to go like completely positive, I can almost even just go neutral. That makes me have a different feeling. And so I think a lot of us are immature in our processing skills on some of that.
Yeah, because there's a lot of women that I spoke to, and and a lot of them I always sense that they're always comparing themselves to somebody else, and they always view themselves less than somebody else. How do you kind of break that mindset of those thoughts? Is it just to change one thought at a time? Is there something you can incorporate into your life, meditation? How can you help somebody that's really kind of stuck in comparison and always feeling not enough?
Well, I think doing the self-discovery part, the inner work, is key. And the Enneagram is a great tool to look at that and, identify the behaviors, your motivations, why you're wanting to please. Are you a big people pleaser? Why is that? Are you feeling, unworthy on the inside, and then doing that work of going, okay, I am worthy. I am smart. I am enough. And realizing that, and many times it takes experience and age and some sort of event that happens that kind of shakes you up and go, okay, let's switch this around.
100%. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What are some ways that you practice self-awareness or self-love for yourself?
Solitude. Solitude is one of the things that I never did. I didn't even, I was so unself-aware that I didn't even, somebody asked me, like, what do you like to do for fun? I'm like, I don't even know. I don't even know. Like, how sad is that? And so it led me down to, like, what do I like? What's my dreams? I don't even know what my dreams are. Okay, I like nature, but what is that? And so it gave me, I don't want to say permission, but it just, a growth path that I need to be by myself. I need to figure out things on my own. I need to travel by myself. Like, I've always been around people and caring for people. So what that looked like for me was stepping away and kind of withdrawing into more of that away space and doing, asking questions about myself, discovering what it is, why I am made the way that I am, and what gives me life. Being out kayaking gives me life. Learning about photography gives me life, and just being able to dive a little bit more into caring. Instead of caring for other people, I'm starting to figure out what I like.
Yeah, I think people need to understand that, like, it's okay just to be you. I feel like some people always try to put on like on a specific persona or try to fit in. And the first thing I think to being self-aware is being okay with just the way you are. Just be okay with whatever thoughts you're currently having. And your thoughts aren't always the truth, and they're not always controllable, right? Sometimes you get thoughts in your head that are completely wild, and you're like, where did that come from? That doesn't shape you, And the same way where you understand and are okay with being yourself, you have to also understand that there's also room for growth and room for change. But first, you have to be okay with yourself before you could even think about changing, because you're not even going to be sure on what to change unless you truly know yourself.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, there's all sorts of work, journaling and some people, but I almost call it like brain dumping and vomiting on the page, not really vomiting, but like when that overwhelm of there's so much, I don't even know where to start, just practicing getting messy on paper and just getting everything out of my head on paper. That's been, and starting to look at like like little buckets of stuff and starting to even vision boarding is something that I love working with women on. It really sparks that, like, what if, what in 2 or 3 years, what does my traveling look like? Do I want to travel someplace and planting that seed, or, is it yoga, or is it, for me, I've wanted to learn to be handy, like to fix things and to use tools, and something that I had never, I'm actually pretty good at it. Come to find out,
And for all the guys out there, like, these are some words from Jordan Peterson, but you can't clean up your mind without cleaning up your room first. If you're constantly have a messy room or a messy living space, that's kind of resembles on how you are as a person and how you are in your mind. So like when people ask me like, where do I start? Where do I begin? I always say, like, look at yourself internally, and then also look at your external environment. If you have a messy room or a messy house, clean that up, because you're going to be constantly distracted with these messes, same way you are constantly distracted with those messes in your mind.
I think it's just so sad that our school system didn't teach us the most important skills that we need in life. Cope, stress, emotional intelligence. It's all intellect, right?
100%.
And it kind of drains creativity right out of our body.
Yes, so much. I wish that I would have known this long ago in my early years, early marriage. My husband and I have been married like 23 years, and we always say like, oh wow, we wish that we would have known. This would have helped a lot, during, some rough patches. So I wished that I would have known this earlier in life.
But imagine if you never learned in the first place, so it's this kind of journey.
Exactly.
It's a journey of life. You learn different things at different points. We all go through different experiences, but somehow we all ended up here at the same time, in agreement with things. So it's just like life is amazing, and you just have to cherish it because it's the only life that we have.
Yeah, Jay Shetty said an interesting quote too, and he said, "You can't be like when someone tells you you can do whatever you want, you can become," and that's like a false statement because you have to learn to become everything that you already are. So it's almost like, just like you say, like peeling back those layers and finding your true self. And some of us are based that value on external things where we can collect what's in my garage, what's in my bank account, and that's never creating happiness, right? But really, we just got to do that mental work in here, and no one tells us these things. Just like you mentioned, I wish I learned earlier in my life as well, because we're running around looking for external validation to somehow soothe and quench whatever is in here, and it was never satisfied.
Never. Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%, and knowing that it's all about the journey, not necessarily like when you get there. It's all, finding that joy in the journey of learning about yourself, of these, I always call them life lessons or growth opportunities that you've, challenges that you've been through. No matter what, they teach you something and give you wisdom. And so it's that finding the joy in the journey, rather than just getting to the top of the mountain. It's
100%.
that journey.
What is your current obsession right now?
I would say my current obsession is dogs and donkeys on TikTok.
Dogs and donkeys?
Yeah, so we're getting ready to move to a farm. We're building a barn. We're gonna live in a barn. And I want to get like a miniature donkey and like act like it's a dog, and it would love on me and let me pet it. And
Oh, that's so interesting. Because yesterday, I don't know what I was looking at, but it was about donkeys being used as like cattle dogs because donkeys are able to like fight off wolves and other animals very well.
Shut up.
Yeah.
yes, that's true. I just heard that too.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's so funny.
A donkey can fight
Yeah.
off.
Wolves, they're very good at fighting off like animals that try to like attack the pack of sheep or whatever animals you have. Yeah.
That's cool because they're always portrayed as like the dumb animal in every cartoon. And
Yes.
and that's my old programming that's telling me right now, hey, I don't think you could do that.
Yeah, same. When I was watching yesterday, I had to like listen. I was like, donkeys are supposed to be like, you say they're dumb animals, but no, they're actually fairly intelligent. I guess they're strong too. Yeah, so I'm gonna get a donkey instead of a dog in the future. 100%.
Me too.
There you go.
Me too.
You're on it.
Are you learning to be more like sustainable on your own environment that you guys are moving from?
Yeah, hopefully we will. I mean, we're not there yet, but yes, I would like to, definitely. Garden and good green energy.
Yeah,
So yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I think that's something that we all need to come back to. I feel like we're so disconnected from nature, and it's causing so much disharmony with ourselves. And even if you think about it, if we're technically overpopulated as the world says, and we need to work on climate change, and why doesn't the government or the world teach us skills how to learn how to be more sustainable and how to take from the environment and then give back to the environment? And we're in Chicago, so I always talk to my grandpa about these things, how they grow crop, and they also use fertilizer from animals for the crops to fertilize. They use the leaves. They don't throw them away. They feed the pigs instead. And it's always full circle. Nothing goes to waste, just like nature, right? It's always in this perfect sphere of, I'm blanking out on these words, continuum, whatever it is. So it's like, I wish we could learn those tools, just like I want to say, just get back to nature.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that book, The Nature Fix.
The nature fix.
I've never, who's it written by?
Oh, you should read it. You would love it. It's a great book. Yeah, it's all about getting out in nature and getting, grounded, breathing in, forest bathing, all of that. Yeah. 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 And I think that's connecting and grounding and getting in our body and, the breath and being in that present moment.
Yeah, we actually did an episode on our podcast where we were out in nature. Was it Lake Tahoe?
It's Silver Lake in Oregon, I believe.
Okay, it was
wow.
we were outdoor, and it was cool because you could see the mountains behind us and stuff like that. But that was very refreshing because usually when we podcast, we're like inside in like a like a space, but it was very nice talking about some stuff like out in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Janna,
Yeah.
where can people find you?
I am on Instagram as Enneagram Nurse, and also on Facebook as the Enneagram Nurse page. I have a community there that we work on and connect and have community. And that's one thing I will say with the Enneagram is having a friend or somebody that you can talk to talk through it, and to be honest with you. You can ask questions to them, about how some of the behaviors or the motivations and what they see. So having a community is always really helpful.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Janna.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. It was nice to meet you.
Thank you. Bye.